Well, good morning, congregation of the mighty. It is Sunday school time, and I'm Chief Prophet Tala Price, and I'm going to be your Sunday school facilitator for this rest of this month of December. We've been already kicking off, wrapping up our series from last time on the biotic gospel. And now we're going to be jumping into a new topic that is near and dear to God's heart. And I think that you'll find that it's near and dear to your heart. It's certainly near and dear to mine as we get ready for how we can better collaborate, partner, and work with God in this season. If there's anything that he's really trying to do is get us to the place as the church, as the ecclesia, even as individuals, where we can learn to partner, collaborate, and work with him better. You know, there was that season, and I understand that we do this. We've all been kind of taught, that we're supposed to receive the kingdom as a child, right? Haven't we all been told that? Receive the kingdom as a child? And it's true. And you have to, because when we get born again, as Paul would say, we are mature when it comes to sin, but we are babes when it comes to righteousness. So we have to receive God's kingdom as a child because we are babes to righteousness. We are babes to life. We are babes to holiness. We are babes to truth. And so he has to begin to show us the more excellent way of how he manages and runs his kingdom. And while systematically purging all of the history of and even genetic demonic lies that have been sown into our hearts, sown into our flesh, and really wrapped around and pervasive in our culture. So, of course, we need to receive it as a child. However, as God is maturing us and taking us into the next place and to the next dimension of his kingdom, okay, he needs us to begin the journey of putting the childish things away, right? Paul says, when I was a child, I thought like a child. But now that I am a man, I put childish things away. We don't ever think that God's expectation of us as believers is that we're supposed to grow into the measure and stature of Jesus Christ, that we're ever supposed to grow beyond that childlike faith. Okay, because of course you're new to salvation. Salvation's entering you as a grain of a mustard seed, but he didn't expect his kingdom to stay the grain of a mustard seed. He doesn't expect the salvation in us to stay the grain of a mustard seed. There is a point and an expectation in every parent's heart. Okay, a hope in all the parents' hearts to watch their kids ultimately grow up. They'll miss them as babies. You might miss them as toddlers sometimes, but you rejoice in the factor, in the product of them becoming a full grown, extension and manifestation of who you are. You don't want them to stay infants for life because you're looking forward to what they will become, not how they started, but what they will become. And so that expectation is the Lord has as well as our Father in heaven, that he could see the joy that was set before him, endured the cross and the shame for what we might become, what we would grow into, to see the full manifestation of who he is in us, right? Not just in seed form, but in full grown maturity as an adult. And so we're in the era and in the next season where God is looking for his full grown fruit. Can you write that down in your journals this morning, right? Write that down in the comments this morning, that God is looking for full grown fruit, right? Because it's when the fruit is full grown that you can use it or benefit or harvest or profit from it. You cannot profit from a seed beyond its potential of what it will be, right? That's how you profit from a seed. You sell seeds because you're selling people on what that seed can produce, what it has the potential to become, not because of what it is today. And so God is looking for a people and a church in this hour to become full grown and to mature. I sit here and I smile in my heart and laugh because this is the foundation upon which Dr. Price actually started her ministry. Was God telling the church, I need you to mature. And if you listen to her messages and her revelation and all the things that she espoused and has taught over the years, everything was driving us toward maturity, building the next layer in brick in which we could come into that measure and stature and fullness of Jesus Christ. Right? God wants us to be the fullness of who he is, not just a small measure of who he is. but the fullness. It says that we have the Godhead in us, right? The fullness of the Godhead in us bodily. He didn't just give us a piece. He didn't just give us a small part. He didn't just give us a certain degree of who he is. He gave us the fullness of the Godhead to operate in us bodily because they wanted us to be complete, onward towards perfection and completion, and ultimately maturity in Jesus Christ. So we're in that era where God is wanting to work with and collaborate and produce the mature saint. Okay, which is why he's opening up revelations and understandings of his word and his truth like we have not seen. Not because these revelations are new, but because they were not visible to our generation. You know, I heard someone say that we don't need prophets and apostles today because there is no new revelation coming out. And that's true. Even when Jesus came to the planet, he said his message wasn't new. And it wasn't new. It just wasn't revealed to a generation of dark and dense and dull minds, you see, and dull hearts. Dull hearts could not perceive the message that they had been sending since eternity. If you go back and read through the prophets, it says that God getting the ascending prophets, having them rise up early, go and tell Israel, go and give them this message. Okay. Going back and forth. Okay. Trying to tell Israel what the word of the Lord was, what the mind of God was for them, what their purpose was in the earth, what he created and really established them to do. Rising up early, sending prophets. Right. That's how we got Luke 11:49. Right. And 50 through 50, where it says that wisdom sent apostles and prophets. So God had been sending messengers, but their hearts were too dull and dense to perceive and receive it. So God doesn't have to bring new revelations to the planet. He has to unveil or reveal the original ones that the generation's hardness of heart could not bear in those times and seasons. So the prophet's job of today, the apostle's job of today, is to speak to the hardness of heart that has been created by the deception and by the lies of darkness, by the mutations of darkness in our makeup and our design, so that they can understand what God is doing in their generation and their era and their time. So the whole idea that we're bringing mysteries and revelations and words from the Lord that are, out of this world. Well, they technically are out of this world because that's where prophecy begins, right? It begins in God's world and then makes its way to ours through his prophetic vessels. However, we're not coming up with anything outside of what God has already been dispensing and trying to accomplish from the beginning. Or in our case of our understanding, if you were in our Biotic Gospel session last time, from before time began, right? That this is new to us. Everything that you might be hearing from a prophet, even what they're hearing. Some of these people out here, my God, they don't know God. Okay, they haven't read his word, so it's new to them. But it's not new to God's eternal continuum. It's not new to God's eternal agenda and purpose for mankind. It's new to you. It's not new to creation. We need to distinguish that what's new to us doesn't mean it's new to creation or it's new to the God who gave us the revelation. Okay, it's not new to him. What he did was unveil a hidden truth, a truth that's being hidden by who? Hidden by lies, hidden by darkness, hidden by the occult, hidden by Satan's regime and agenda, hidden by genetic issues and curses and assignments and all kinds of maladies and mutations that literally affected the human genome all the way down the line since Adam's fall. And so this is crazy for us to think about, right? But that is what God is doing. Does that make sense to you all today? So when we're talking about bringing forth revelation and insight, we're not bringing something into the planet that is new to God. It's new to a generation who's never heard it before. Amen. And so God needs us in this season to mature, which is why God's bringing in or unveiling the next wave of hidden truth and revelation that has been eclipsed by man, because the more he begins to enlighten our understanding through knowledge, through information, through all of the stuff that we've experienced technologically, he can now cause us to see the things that were already encoded in creation to come forth so that it can manifest the kingdom that is to come. So the more he enlightens us, the more he gives us knowledge and understanding as a human race, as a collective, the more he can then reveal the next level of hidden truth, okay, or revelation that was already encoded in creation to help his kingdom manifest, which is why he could write the book or show John the book of Revelations, because he's like, it's already encoded in creation and I'm unveiling it generation by generation. To each person or each people group that'll be responsible for manifesting that particular dimension of the kingdom in that time period. And so we have to begin to think very differently when we're dealing with God. This is why he wants us to go onward towards maturity, because he wants his kingdom to mature. You know, your household can't be, okay, more mature than the oldest person in the house. If it was just a bunch of children or seeds in the house, how mature would that household be? And how could they bring one another to that place unless they had that mature thing that was guiding and steering them toward that outcome? And so in this season, God wants mature children because he wants us to be able to do mature things and to manifest the maturity of his kingdom. Can you say that? God is ready for me to manifest the maturity of his kingdom, right? So he's going to be revealing mature things to us because we're now a generation whose consciousness can better understand the inner workings of his creation because of how much we have discovered, how much we have really unearthed, even in how we deal with technology and all of the things. We've unearthed a lot about creation's operations. And so now, because we've been able to unearth so much of that, God is expecting more mature fruit and outcomes from us than he did in previous generations. He told me that we were going to ultimately become the generation of his strength, the generation of his power, because of our understanding of power, our understanding of strength, our understanding of energy, our understanding of how his world works, and how we're better understanding the works that he gave us dominion over, because you can't dominate what you don't know, what you're ignorant of. So we had to be subjected under tutors until God can begin to trust us with the understanding, the knowledge, the revelation of his world. Okay, so that we can be stewards over what he gave us at the beginning. Yes. So understand, mature church. What era are we in? We're in the era of the mature church, the mature believer, the mature saint that can collaborate and partner with God. Now, that's different than the cultural Christian. I'm talking about the seeds of Christ, those that bear the seed of Christ in them, not those who appreciate the culture of Christianity and like to adopt and, you know what I mean, be a part of its customs and practices and rituals, or if you will. OK, or I would say customs more than rituals, because we don't have to do rites with God. But the reality is that I'm not speaking to those, but I am speaking, okay, to the seed of Jesus Christ, that it is time for us to grow up, time for us to mature and begin to manifest the fullness of who God is on the inside of us. But in order to do so, we've got to deal with some heavy things that have been blocking our ability to grow, that have stopped and debilitated the growth of the seed of Christ on the inside of us, that has made it difficult for God to bring us to this level, because he can't even sometimes get through. He can't get through the things that we've been taught. And we have become, in the words of the Lord, an idolatrous and blasphemous culture. An idolatrous and blasphemous culture. And he says, because of the blasphemy and the degree of idolatry that has gone out in his church and in the world, he has not been successful at converting saints to this level of maturity. He cannot bring them forward into perfection because they keep being distracted and diverted by the culture, by this idolatrous and blasphemous culture. So he cannot bring us into the fruition of the fruit, the real fruit and product that Jesus Christ gave his life's blood for. God told me when I was beginning to understand him from this dimension, he began to say to me, yes, understand that I did not die just because I loved you, and I didn't die just to save you. I died for you to become something. It was what you were going to become that was the joy that was set before me. Not just because I loved you and understood your suffering, your challenges, and all of the consequences of the law of sin and death on your soul. But because I knew that if I liberated you from that, you could become something. You could become what we envisioned in our hearts. and what we wanted for you and for ourselves from the beginning. But now God says, I'm dealing and fighting with a culture that is pushing back on my product, that is pushing back on what I wanted to produce, which is pushing back on my harvest for my sacrifice. It's pushing back on it, and it's diverting people to all of these things so that we never become what Jesus wants, and we stay in the image and the likeness of the devil that we fell into, okay? That Adam led in his soul. And so we are becoming that. And so we're fighting back on it. And God says, I've been trying to talk to people on different levels. I've been trying to reach them. I've been trying to warn them. I've been trying to change, correct, all of it. I've been trying to do this work, transform them, and I'm being hindered left and right. And there's a blockade between me and my people that must be removed if I'm going to get this fruit and this harvest off of what we did and why I really died. So let's talk about what's in the way, elephants in the room, okay, that is stopping the progress of our salvation. So let's look into that. All right. Today's or this month's series, okay, we're going to be dealing with starting with a prophetic word that God gave me some time ago. And this was back last year when he first started revealing the difficulty he was having in reaching his people. He's like, I cannot reach my people, okay, and I'm having difficulty reaching my people. So this is what is the foundation for this series this month that we're going to talk about. And so back in October 2023, he told me that this is, or 22, I think this word was, but he said, this is the era, right, of all or nothing, the era of God first and only. You shall have no other gods before me. Exodus 20, verse 3. That God says, I will not continue to compete with all of these deities over people who I sacrifice for, who are saying that they're serving me, who are saying that I'm their God. I am not going to compete with all of these other deities in this season. It's either you want me or you do not. And God is actually fine either way. Because God does not want a soul in heaven that wants to traffic another God in his kingdom. He already dealt with that with Lucifer. He doesn't want a soul that wants to traffic other things outside of him and outside of what he set up to preserve, protect, care, and even keep his creation going and alive and providing the things that he said in his word, life, godliness, joy, peace, all of the things that he promised. And so he promised these things to his people. And so this is the season where God says, I'm not going to be dealing with other gods. And other gods, believe it or not, back to the first commandment, are one of the number one things he's battling. He's battling with this, okay, to try to reach his people. Because even are concerned about false prophets and false prophecy. You cannot be susceptible to those things until you first adopt a false god. All right, I'm going to say that one more time. You cannot be susceptible to a false prophecy or a false prophet until you have first adopted a false god. Now, you may have adopted a false god's belief system, a false god's doctrines, a false god's customs, culture. You may have adopted it intentionally or unintentionally, but it's when you start adopting the doctrines, practices, belief systems, customs, and culture of a false god that you can become susceptible to false prophecy, divination, and a false prophet. You are more susceptible to their messengers because the words of those messengers are already in your heart, are already working your heart, have already seduced your heart. So you have to look at where your heart was vulnerable when you think about possibly being a victim of a false prophecy or a false word. Where was I susceptible? Because there was a kindredness that made you connect with that or believe that that could be true or whatever. So you fall prey to a lot of false cultures. Okay, the culture of a false god, the customs of a false god, the practices of a false god, the doctrines of a false god, okay, the belief systems of a false god before you become susceptible to their messengers and the words of those messengers. So we have to look at that in this season because their cult has created such interference and such diversion so that Jesus Christ, the shepherd of the house, the shepherd of the sheep, his voice cannot be heard among his people. So let's look at that. God is no longer negotiating for his place as first in our lives. He's not going to, as Dr. Price would say, he's not going to get up every day and audition to be our God. All right. I'm not auditioning every day to prove to you why I'm the one. Well, God, I prayed for this and you didn't do it. Well, God, I believe for that. That didn't happen. I was with this leader and they threw me out. All of this kind of stuff that makes God constantly have to plead, okay, and audition to remain in that top spot in your life. You either believe that he is who he says he is, or you do not. If you do not, oh my goodness, okay, then obviously you can leave him alone. But if you believe that he is your God, then you have to reconcile those things in your heart, because he's not going to be auditioning for your affections. You either believe in him, are going to be loyal and faithful to him, or you never will. Another God has already taken his place, because loyalty and faithlessness are all signs that you're looking for another deity. You are God shopping. You're looking for an alternative because what you believed broke your heart. So now you're looking for a relief, a soother, a pacifier, an alternative to what you feel like hurt you. And that's going to make you susceptible to false gods, false messengers, and false prophecies. And we need to be very, very clear about these things in this season, because God says, I'm not doing that. And so some of you guys will witness as we go into 2025 and beyond that he's going to go silent. Heaven's going to go quiet. It's going to go silent, especially because he's got a lot of things he's going to be pushing through, but also because he's like, I've been talking. And letting you know and sending my prophets and warning and you've not been responsive. So let's talk about this. This is the season of that. We're in the window. We're in the window of years of the hard reset. I don't want to just tie this down to a month. This was obviously a prophetic word that I gave, so that's the language. But we're in an era of the hard reset. We're in years that are going to culminate in this major reset. Things are being reset every day. Okay, new legislations, policies, everything. Things are being reset on a daily basis. So we're in that window right now. Now look at this. It says God is resetting us back to the sovereignty of his will. Because God says, I'm moving from this whole concept of this daddy, loving, whatever, household God, to now taking back my sovereign seat. Because see, while we were playing with God domestically in our private devos, having our private experiences, the enemy was taking over the sovereign seats of governance in our country in particular, and then throughout the planet. So God's like, wait a minute, because at the end of the day, when I have to make a decision between your soul and our relationship and my sovereignty, I've got to choose sovereignty first, because it's my sovereignty that is keeping the world under my control, that is keeping this thing under the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, and what God wants to happen to it and for it. So he has to go back and start realigning us back to sovereign. Because we fell in love with the Savior. We fell in love with the Daddy God. We fell in love with the domestic version of Jesus Christ. We love him at home and in our prayer closets. But his sovereignty, his rulership, his dominion is under attack around the world. So we're moving back to that. So as a result, he is already doing these things and will continue resetting our homes, our jobs and professions and occupations. He's resetting our churches, our souls, and our emotional needs. He's resetting our relationships, and he's resetting priorities, even resetting our lifestyle. And we could tell by the things that, are even being restricted in the world. Okay, that are being cut off from cutting us off from just access to certain things, because he is resetting that, because he wants to bring us back under the sovereignty, the governance, and the regulations that have kept creation moving according to his will for eons. And it's time for us to do that. So God is retaking control over the lives and destinies of his people. And he's doing that through a series of circumstances, situations, conditions, changing in relationships, money, all of it. He is resetting that, retaking control. And you can tell he's retaking control because if you talk to a real saint, the average real saint, they'll be like, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know what's happening right now. And we all feel so out of control because we don't know what's happening right now. Why? God is taking control. He's moving all of the chess pieces around so that he can be back on top and get this thing moving according to what will produce his outcomes and keep us on the trajectory of his eternal continuum. So that is important for us to understand. God is taking control, seizing control. Because I know sometimes we think that we're in it. Okay. Now, God is removing every idol of the heart. He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully. And that is Psalm 24:4. Okay. So God is dealing with this. The only people that are going to have access to God, that are going to be able to hear his voice and understand what he's doing in the midst of all of this crazy that we've seen around us over these last just 4 years since 2020, are those that have clean hands and a pure heart and who have not lifted up their soul to an idol. That's key. And if you're taking notes and you're following along with this today, I want you to highlight in your Bibles and in your notes, and you can put it there in the comments, lifted up your soul to an idol. Because in this era, it's about what you have given your soul to. Who have you given your soul to? What things have you given your soul to? And we're going to talk about that this month. Household idols. What are the household idols? So as we do so, let's go ahead and just put out an acronym that we'll be using for the rest of our time period. Okay. And that is idols of the heart. Okay. What is an idol? Well, let's read our passage here. Okay. That is on the screen. And that is from Ezekiel. All right. Let's see if I can, 14:3. And it says, Son of man, these men have set up, there we go. These men have set up their idols in their hearts and put before them that which causes them to stumble into iniquity. Should I let myself be inquired of, prayed to, sought of at all by them? See, that's why we're dealing with this. We're going to go through the silent piece. Because God is saying in this season, should I literally allow you to seek me after you have set up an idol in your heart that has caused you to stumble into iniquity? We're going to talk about what that looks like. Because a lot of times, like I said, you're going to understand through this series, nobody's going to wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to go get an idol and serve some other false god, fall into sin, and leave Jesus Christ. Most of us who are watching today, that is not the sentiment of your heart. That is not the consciousness of your mind. But there are things that are at work in our souls that can create such an outcome. So let's look at this. Idols means imaginations, dreams and passions, obsessions, and lifestyle. Remember our acronym for idol: imaginations, dreams and passions, obsessions, and lifestyle. So as we talk through this, I want you guys to remember these at the forefront of your mind when we talk about idols. Because we're not going to be just talking about the traditional use of the term. And I'm going to show you how it shifted over time from what it was and what we understood idols to be in their, foundational or original definition to how they're still at work today and have made that particular shift in our times and in our seasons and in our culture. So is God what you want, or the vehicle to what you want? I, the Lord, will answer him who comes according to the multitude of his idols. Ezekiel 14:4, which we're going to be studying and referring back to throughout the series. And you have to ask yourself that. Is God what I want? Or is he just the vehicle to help me get what I want? Because when you have to reconcile if God is the objective of it, right? Of the objective of what you want, okay, that automatically changes or defines what these things are. But if God is the vehicle of what you want, then that can change what your heart and your soul are susceptible to and vulnerable to when you're wanting to get that. Because at the end of the day, the soul's job is to fulfill the desire of your heart. That's why you have a soul. Okay? And why it's under your control, why it's a free will agent. So you have to examine throughout this series, is that me? Do I have to look at what I really want from God. Is he my God or my vehicle? Is he my God or my vehicle? Is he my God or is he my vehicle? So God first means set your mind on things above and not on things on the earth. So you have to say, where is my mind? And it seems like it's so simple. Oh, just think about heaven. No, no, no. Set means to establish yourself there. Have you established that heaven and the ways of God are the ways you want to live and you want to operate your soul? Set, establish. Have you established that this is the way that you want to live and this is the things that you want to do with your soul? What have you established? What have you set? And is it set based on what heaven does, how God runs life, what he has established for his creation? Or are you doing on things of earth based on the things, the lies, and all that Satan has cultivated to become the culture of darkness, the culture of the alternative? So I want us to think about that. Is God first? Is he first? Or is what I want from God first? Challenge. Are your household idols asking to be, I'm sorry, let me say that right. Are your household idols asking to excuse you from your calling? Right? Do you have idols that are trying to make up an excuse or give you cause or an excuse to, not have to answer the call that's on your life? When we get back together, we'll go into a full detail breakdown of Luke 14 and the wedding feast, because it is a good example of how idols, household idols, can creep in and actually divert you from Jesus Christ while never taking you out of the church. Okay. How these idols can divert you from Jesus Christ while never taking you out of the church. You will remain in Christian culture even though you have severed your connection with the Lord. Why call me Lord, Lord? I never knew you. You can sever that connection while staying very faithful to the customs and to the culture of the faith. And we're going to talk about how that works. So what does it mean to put God first? What we're going to be working on doing, what you're going to be journaling through and working out as you walk through this series with me this month, is how to go back to putting God first in focus, interests, regimens, sentiments, and your time. These are all the key areas that get hit first, or I should say are the first indicators. These are all the first indicators that your soul is wrestling with an idol, because you no longer want to focus. I don't want to read my Bible. I don't want to go to church. I'm going to prayer. I just want to, just whatever. I'm skipping some things this week. Okay. My involvement, all of that is decreasing. Focus. So first step is to figure out what is going to be dominating your focus, because that's the key indicator of where your soul is, barometers of where your soul is and how to measure that. The second is your interest. What you're now interested in is another indicator of the barometer of your soul, where your soul is with God or even inside of your own passions. Is it cultivating or developing something inside of it? Your regimens. You don't want to keep up with any of your godly routines and regimens that keep your soul healthy, that keep it moving towards God, that nurture the nature of the seed of Christ in you. You don't want to do it. You become lackluster, indifferent, ambivalent, insensitive. Okay? Your sentiments, your attitudes about the things of God changing. Why is it always got to be like this? Just all this stuff. These people out here just trying to be all religious. Your sentiments about the ways of God. If the ways of God are irritating you to that degree, let's look at the barometer. Let's use it as an indicator that we've got to go revisit what's happening in our hearts, and then what you want to do it with your time. If God is the last thing you want to give your time to, you need to examine where we are in the idols of the heart. And we're going to talk that through, because what we're going to focus on, examine your heart. Is he first? All right. Because what we're going to focus on is a heart examination. We've got to go in and do some diagnostics on our hearts in this season to see if we really be in the faith. right? It said, examine yourself to see if I'm really having faith in God. Am I really having faith in God? Or am I just doing what's become routine? Or am I just, doing what I know and what I feel? Am I just, keeping up with whatever because it's what we've always done? But where is God seated in your heart? That's what you want to ask yourself this month as we get ready to go into 2025. Where is he really seated, though? I know what I say, and I know what I should say because I'm a well-trained Christian. But where is he really seated? Let's take the barometer test. And how does the soul, and this is why we want to pay attention to that focus, right? Those first, what it takes to make God first, because all of those are how your soul begins to create an idol. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's go back to the focus, interest, regiments, sentiments, time. The things that put God first are indicators that God is first in terms of how you use them. Can also be indicators when he is drifting away from you, or you're drifting away from him, because he's established. So you're drifting away from him, and perhaps an indicator that your soul is creating an idol. So when we get back together, we're going to walk through how the soul creates idols and dismantling the secret idols of the heart and the logic that drives them. Okay, the secret idols of the heart and the logic that drives them, because you don't set up an idol in your heart because you plan to walk away from God, apostatize your Christian walk, but you do set up idols in your heart with a logic system that you're using to navigate or survive your life experience and how you're going to engage with your reality. So let's get ready when we come back together to talk about how your soul, creates an idol. If you enjoyed it today, go ahead and let me know. Leave something down there in the comments. And if you have things that you have questions about and want to know more about as we're walking through this series together, feel free to leave those there. We're going to be getting into some thick of it. You're going to be very excited about it because it's going to be hopefully very sobering, but also very delivering, so that you can go and navigate and look through your own life and say, man, I never really thought about my soul kind of, acting this way. And now you can put your own soul, I should say, back into a reset. How about that? That the goal after this series is to reset our souls for 2025 so we can get back in alignment with God, but most of all, so that we can become the mature saints that he can rely on to manifest his kingdom in this era. Is that you today? If it's so, I want you to stick with me because I'll be back next week for the second part of how our soul creates an idol. Thank you again for joining us. Make sure you stay on right here on this page for our Sunday service, which begins promptly at 10 o'clock. I look forward to talking with you guys at that time. God bless you all. Have a blessed rest of your day.